Okay, cool. Great. Wonderful. So, hello everyone. My name is Stephanie Brumsey. I'm the Vice President of Special Events for the Newswomen's Club of New York. And today we are having a program called How to Get Hired in a Pandemic. It's been a crazy year and a half. And while some of us want to get hired at new companies simply to move up and move on and grow, there are other people during this terrible economic time that have lost their jobs, are out of work, and are looking to figure out how they too can get jobs in such an unconventional time. So, joining us today are two talent recruitment ladies from NBC. So, first there's Tiffany Lopez. She recruits for MSNBC and NBC. And there's Samantha Tata, who recruits for CNBC. Thank you for joining us today, taking some time out of your schedule to talk to the people who have signed up for this event. I appreciate it. Awesome. So I'm going to get this show rolling. And I'm also going to tell everyone that there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions at the end. Everyone has questions. I'm not a psychic. So if you have any burning, yearning questions, you can drop them in the chat and I will address them as they are there. Also at the end, when I prompt for it, we can also have you verbalize your questions where, you can turn your mic on, turn your camera on, and just ask these ladies directly any and all, for any and all information that you are seeking. Okay, so with that, I'm gonna get started. And I would like to ask you both, if you could tell us a little bit about your backgrounds and what it is you actually do for NBC. Like what are you doing as a talent recruitment person? I'm gonna ask Samantha to go first, only because I'm like really. Anyway, I'm gonna ask Samantha to go first, and we're gonna go with Tiffany, and we're gonna keep going.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for having us today. Really excited to talk to you all today. So my name's Sam. I'm a recruiter in talent acquisition at NBC Universal, and I support CNBC. The way our talent acquisition team is structured is that each business has a dedicated team of recruiters, and so I support CNBC. Tiffany supports MSNBC and NBC News. And my background is actually from the news side of things. So I started my career as a digital news intern in Los Angeles at our NBC affiliate. And then I worked my way up to freelance and then staff. And then I left for a little bit, was a digital reporter at the Pix 11 News Tribune affiliate out in New York. It's like right there. I was there for several years and then got a note from a recruiter here saying, hey, we're looking for journalists to hire other journalists. Would you be interested? And I definitely was. I was open to a change, curious about it, and then ultimately landed on this team. And now I'm recruiting for CNBC, and I support mostly their digital news roles. We have 3 recruiters on our team, one for early career, one for TV production roles, and then myself for digital news.
And Tiffany, you also have a news background, yeah?
Correct, yeah. So I won't reiterate what Sam said about the way, TA is structured and broke down. I'll just go into my background. I'm kind of an NBC News kid. So I started at the CNBC desk as an intern when I was in my senior year, hopped over to Maddo for an internship, and then kind of worked my way through afterwards, doing overnight shift, weekend overnights, and I was associate producing. And then I ended up back at Maddo for about 4 years or so. And while I was at Maddo, I raised my hand to kind of do the internship program. So I was helping interview and onboard and support our interns and giving them feedback and working with all that. And after doing that for a bit, I was like, oh, wait, I'm passionate about this. Like, that's interesting. I thought I was going to, maybe be a producer, maybe go in the field. And I just loved this. So without even thinking it might be a career, I just asked, my executive producer at the time if I could just talk to talent acquisition and just kind of see how they did things. And I wanted to see if I could, go on the road with them and just help them recruit, people just as a side, as an employee. And then that conversation just turned into an opportunity that I couldn't turn away. And it's and I've been doing it for about 1.5 years now, and I really like it.
I love it. I love the fact that you both have background as journalists, because who better to hire journalists than someone who has worked as one of us. You know what we need to know and how we think. So that's wonderful. Thinking along those lines, can you tell me a little bit about the broad spectrum of jobs that are available in the NBC universe? It's not all, you know, people on camera and like looking to be like the next Al Roker or Joe Scarborough, right? Like, you know, what's available to us? NBC is a very large company. And, you know, just to state for the record, I work for MSNBC people, but this is a question you should ask. Either one of you can take it.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak specifically for CNBC. So we have a super wide array of roles. I was actually really surprised when I came to CNBC, the diversity of jobs that were available. So on the digital side of things, we have producers, and some producers will go out and shoot their own video, edit it together, maybe sometimes host it too, and do a full package start to finish that gets posted on YouTube or our website. We also have a ton of beat reporters. CNBC really values beats and expertise. So we have folks who report on the business of sports. We have folks who report on retail, consumer, personal finance. We have work reporters who talk about careers and advice and how to get ahead. And then we also have folks, you know, like I'm hiring right now for an animator on the digital side of things. So it's a really wide array of roles that we have at CNBC specifically. So I think anybody can kind of fit in and also like kind of make it their own too, like especially in digital, it's so flexible and people are still, you know, figuring out what's the best way to be a producer, what's the best way to be an AP or an animator. So a lot of flexibility too.
Yeah, piggybacking off of that, like it's, you know, it's how do we do it, you know, how do we do it different? Like with digital, like the way it's growing is just is crazy, I think. So we do have like, you know, everything behind the scenes, everything Sam said about, you know, producers that are in the field. We've got segment producers who, you know, who are just trying to figure out a way to take these really huge stories, you know, like these super long pieces and try to, you know, do it in 5-minute chunks to explain it to everyone. If it's the Maddow show, it's a 20-minute chunk at the top.
Oh my gosh, those 20-minute chunks for Maddow.
20-minute A block. So, you know, we've got, you know, behind the scenes, we've got investigative, you know, reporters. We've got people on the back end, like, so, I mean, social media, right? Like that, how, you know, a couple years ago, that wasn't a thing, right? Like who'd think that you'd have an entire career, you know, and they'd be looking for the person who best knows Instagram, you know, best knows Twitter. So that, you know, folks dealing with metadata, right? Because everything's digital and figuring out this is how we stored it before. It doesn't work because we've got so much more material now. We've got so many different platforms now. Like there's just, you know, I feel like by the end of this call, there will be another job that we didn't even think we needed. And, you know, because Peacock needs something, we're like, oh, we do need someone on the technical side of this who also knows reporting and also knows this. So super wide range of stuff that we've got going on.
And I do want to clarify something. Both of you mentioned reporters in various aspects of the jobs. And I just want to clarify, you're not just talking about like the reporter that you see when you turn on the 7 o'clock news and like they're standing there in front of a convenience store because some robbery just happened. You're also talking about people who walk the streets and write articles for the website, et cetera. Yes.
And people,
yes.
Yeah, people that sit at desks and make phone calls, you know, you need someone filing those FOIAs, you need someone calling people for comments, you need like you're reporting, you don't have to be on, you know, on camera, but like those stories need to be reported out. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah, that's a great clarification too. I know even like the term like reporter or producer can mean so many different things across different businesses and even within the same business sometimes. Mm-hmm. So definitely good to clarify. Yeah, when I talk about reporters on the digital side, I think about folks who are writing articles, who are building sources, maintaining those sources, breaking news online. And then sometimes more and more frequently, our bookers and our segment producers are tapping on our digital reporters to go on air on CNBC and report about the news that they just broke or about a story of their particular particularly adept in its coverage.
Wonderful. Now, Arlene Schulman asked a question in the comments that folds into my next question. So I'm going to just like mix it up. Thank you, Arlene. What do you look for when you're recruiting and hiring? And what is the recruiting process? Like, how do you find people? Like, is it just like through the portal, or is it like a LinkedIn stalking mechanism? What is it? And how about we let Tiffany start off?
Yeah, my brother always says a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. And I'm like, that's just a Venn diagram, but like, it's all of the above. We're definitely looking in the portal, right? If you want to work here and you're good, we want you. So I look there. If I feel like, you know, I mean, LinkedIn definitely, like I live on LinkedIn, like we're always looking for folks. It's called passive, right? Passive candidates. If anyone on here is like, you're not actively looking, but you might want to have a conversation, I want to talk to you. So we're going on LinkedIn, looking at your background, stalking a little bit, yeah.
Wow.
And also like it's referrals, right? Like, you know, both Sam and I have been in the industry. I can't tell you how many resumes I get from folks that I've worked at, you know, that were at NBC, are now at CNN or at ABC and stuff like that. I work with this really great person, you know, they're looking, send me the resume, have those conversations, whether or not I have a job for them. I just want them in my pipeline. Yeah, it's the same way a reporter, like when I ask them, I'm like, where do you find your stories? They're like, everywhere. Like, that's where I find my candidates, like everywhere. Sam, I'll let you add.
No, Tiffany nailed it. Yeah, it's people who apply. We look in our application portal. We are committed to looking at everybody who comes in, and an actual human being will look at your application. And then LinkedIn, yeah, if we feel like we need to sort of beef up the amount of candidates that we have, or find folks who have maybe a little bit more relevant experience than the folks who've applied, then we'll go out to LinkedIn, or I'll even search sometimes like on competitors' websites and see like who's covering this story today, and then like click on their name, look at the stories they've been writing, and reach out to them if they have relevant experience.
That's really awesome.
Tweets are on point for something, like if they're tweeting a lot.
I love that. I love that. Speaking of relevant experience, and speaking from experience, do the people who apply to work at NBC have to have experience working at a broadcast news outlet? I myself, you know, again, I'm going to just refer to myself because I live this life, but I segment produce for the weekends, Tiffany Cross and Jonathan Capehart. And prior to NBC, you know, I had like a very, very short stint at CBS, and most of my relevant work experience comes from Reuters as a producer. Does that harm or delay potential candidates from making the jump into an organization like NBC?
That's a good question.
Do you want to go? I saw you unmute. So no, I wouldn't say that's a harm at all. What I would say is, first and foremost, go by the job description. So if the qualifications and requirements that are laid out in the job description match, for the most part, what you do and the experience you have, then you're golden. Typically, like in my experience, we haven't required like you have to have previous experience at a broadcast network. We usually talk about major news publications, and that can be digital only, it can be digital broadcast, you know, combo. It doesn't necessarily have to be that you need to come from like one of the big networks in order to come to us.
Okay.
Tiffany, you were going to say the same thing?
Yeah, nail on the head. You know, I always say like, you know, look at the job description. And I mean, for a lot of our, like a lot of the roles that I recruit for, like you have to be able to write, right? Like you have to be able to write and you have to be able to produce content, and we do a writing test. And I feel like I'll give the writing test to anybody who wants. Like, you want to take it? I'll take the writing test. Like I want to see, you know, I want to see what you got. If you don't have experience at the network level or at the broadcast level, but you can write, I can talk to a hiring manager about you. So that's what I do.
That's wonderful, and what I want to hear. Thank you. Thank you. I'm clearly seeking for a job. No, I'm just kidding. Moving on. What's it like? Find me, I have a resume. What's it like working at NBC now? right? So like we're talking to people who may be looking for a job here in the here and now. Does this mean that I have to commute to 30 Rock, you know, and sit with like 70 million people in a pod somewhere? Am I working from home? Am I working from anywhere? Like what does that setup look like right now?
I feel like it depends. For the most part, everyone's home. We've got, you know, like some of our directors are going in, some of our EPs. A lot of folks, like if they have an office, you know, they're able to go in because they have their own space. Right now, like the company as a whole has said, you know, we will revisit it in September, right? Like every state's kind of doing their own thing, and we're such a huge company that like we're in almost every state, and every state's doing a little something different. So, you know, definitely depends. I would say for the roles that we're opening now, the question is always asked you know, of every hiring manager, is this a role that you can potentially see being like remote, even when we come back? And honestly, for some of them it's yes, and for some of them it's no. Like there's certain roles that you really do need to be in house, and you know, we're making it work, you know, through the pandemic. But ideally, in order to be really successful, right? Because we don't want to set anyone up for failure. Those have to be in-house. Are there a lot more roles that are being put out as possibly remote once we come back? Yeah, more than I thought, you know, we'd be able to do. So, you know, it's definitely case by case basis, but I think we're going to see so much more flexibility in the future.
Yeah, I totally agree. At CNBC specifically, and I feel like a broken record, I'm always talking about CNBC, but at CNBC specifically, it depends on your job. So digital folks are 100% remote at home. They don't need to be in the office. For our shows, we have sort of whittled down how many people need to be in an office, and some teams are alternating their schedules. So you know, these 3 people will go in this week, the next week they'll stay home, and another 3 people will go in instead. Especially if you need to be in a control room where like you really can't do that from home. Then we have folks, you know, working in that capacity. But like Tiffany said, a lot of folks were able to really pivot and work from home. I mean, we have like some segment producers who are working from home, and I know that that's something that I don't think anybody would have thought was possible before. So it's pretty cool. And I think it will lead to some flexibility in the future. But yeah, as of now, I always tell the candidates we're remote until TBD. We'll revisit it in September. We'll see what happens. The world changes pretty quickly. So we'll see.
I love it. I love it. And yes, I am one of those segment producers working from home. Thank you for allowing me to work in my pajamas. So my next question is, before I get to my question, I want to remind you and the audience, that I'm asking you to drop your questions in the chat. If you have any, you can send them directly to me, or you can put it to everyone, and I will ask them as I receive them, just to let you know. We're also going to, I think I have like 2 more questions. I'll ask them, and then we'll give you an opportunity to verbalize any questions that have come to mind, just to want to let you know that is coming. Okay, back on target. What advice would you give to someone job seeking at NBC? Like getting through the portal, seeking out recruiters themselves on LinkedIn. How much is too much when you're reaching out to a recruiter? Should I email you every day, every hour? That's good. Like how can I stay on your radar in an industry that is so built on coffees with people who work there, and, you know, word of mouth recommendations? How do we do this?
Yeah, I would say first and foremost, my biggest piece of advice to people is to apply. That's how we know that you're serious about a job and that you want to pursue that opportunity. And that's how you'll get to us most directly. And make sure your resume is strong. You really don't need a cover letter. I don't know if that's like industry-wide yet, but that's my recommendation. You don't need one. What I would say though, is especially if you're going for an editorial role, whether it's broadcast or digital, to make sure that your work is easily accessible. So in your resume, link out to your portfolio, so long as it's updated, link out to your reel, link out to your author pages or your bio pages, or specific stories, even if you reference them in your resume, because that's going to make your application stand out. And that's what's going to make the hiring manager's life easiest too, to see, okay, here's their experience and here's what they've done, here's what they've published. So I'd say that's the best way to stand out and to do well. But Tiff, I'll let you add anything.
Yeah, I always say, like, this is so cliche and broken record, and I'm sorry, but like, tailor the resume to the job. Like, every single time, tailor the resume to the job. If you're, if you're applying to be a reporter on the health beat and you've done those stories, link to those stories. Like, those are the stories that you want me to see that you know how to do. So link to those. I can't tell you, I talked to people who have linked to their websites and then like, yeah, I took a look at the website. I looked at, whether it's a reel or their article, they're like, yeah, I haven't touched that in a long time. Why is it at the top of your resume if you haven't touched it in a long time? And I'm super candid. So I'll be like, come on, give me this stuff. And then
we love candid. We love it.
Yeah, there you go. So like, I'm still in the newsroom. So in my head, I'm like, if you're applying for, something that's, a graphics producer, right? Don't give me a boring resume. Like, give me a resume that's going to make the hiring manager go, wow, they have an eye, if you're super passionate about, like, reporting on something specific, link to those stories. And I joke, but for real, like, make your resume like a lazy person's dream, right? Like, anything that they want to see, put it at their fingertips, right? Like, if you are, open to relocating, put that in there. If you have a website or do that, like, make it super easy. I cannot agree with Sam more about applying to the portal. I know it's annoying. And the whole goal is to get past the portal once you apply. But I can't tell you how many people don't get an opportunity because they emailed 12 people about the role, but I didn't get in front of me until we were already in third round interviews, and I'm like, oh, like, if I wasn't about to make an offer, I could totally, I would love to, but now I've got to talk to you about maybe other opportunities. If you really want the job, yeah, like, apply, and then email those people, and then network, and then all of this. But you see a job you like, tailor the resume, apply, and then do the networking.
Okay.
And rant.
No, love the rants because I want all the things, right? But I'm still lacking, like, how diligently should I stalk you? Like,
not every day. I'm gonna tell you right now, not every day. And it's like, it's for the opportunities that you're very serious about. Like, I get folks who and bless them, like, I get it, like, they want their next opportunity and maybe they're not quite sure what that is, but you have to narrow that down. Like, I can't narrow that down for you. You have to know what you want your next step to be. I can clarify things, right? I can tell you, this is what you think this job is. This is what it really is. This is how this team operates. This is where I think you'd be a fit. But if you need to sit down with yourself and figure out what you want, you have to do that first, focus, and then come to me, right? If you're coming to me every week with, you want to be an associate producer, you want to be an executive producer, you want to be a beat reporter, I don't know, like, I can't help you there, right? You've got to narrow that down. If you come to me, every 2 months or so with like, hey, I applied to this role, this is why I think I'm a fit, here's a resume for that, if you think I'm a fit, send me to the hiring manager, I'm going to do that, If it's every other day with something different, there's not too much that I can do with that.
I love that. Okay, anything from you, Sam?
I totally agree.
Okay. It's like you guys are like halves of the same brain. I'm loving it. Thank you. Okay, so I have some questions I'm gonna read out from my DMs. Again, you guys can drop questions in the chat, and you can also, I'm going to change my view so I can also see the people. You can also like raise your hand, and what I'll do is like I'll alternate between what I have in my chat and people who raise their hand to ask a question, so we can keep this orderly. And we'll use the rest of this time for you to talk to these wonderful recruiters who are taking the time to speak to us. So first question is from Ayana. She asks, is it possible to transition from producing to reporting for for one of NBC's digital verticals, like from NBC BLK or NBC Asia America, etc. And what would I need to do to make that transition if I already have a print background?
That's a great question. I actually love the stories of digital to TV and TV to digital and vice versa, back and forth, because in journalism, you have foundational skills and they are transferable. For example, I know reporters who've started out embedded within a show. They are an associate producer on the show, but they find out they're really interested in healthcare reporting. And they, talk to their boss and they say, hey, I'm really interested in healthcare reporting. How can I do more of this? And that boss can connect them with an editor, right, on the digital side of things, work with that editor, pitch stories to them, develop a relationship. It's almost like a side hustle or a side beat within your own newsroom. And then ultimately, if a position comes open, right, you've just spent 6 months, 8 months, a year building up a portfolio, a relevant portfolio, and now you have sources in that industry. Now you can go apply to it and make the switch. And you just went from a TV producer to a digital reporter. So use your network, use your resources within the newsroom, and raise your hand. A lot of folks, myself included, right? We kind of get in our own way and we say, oh, I can't really do that. Oh, I shouldn't really apply to that. Oh, I can't really ask that. But ask, raise your hand.
You're the same on that, Tiffany, nothing else?
Yeah, same. I feel like it's, I was a producer and I'm a recruiter, right? Like I raised my hand for something. I really found some interest in something and I raised my hand and it's like, Sam said something that I always think, and I always say to people, use your resources, know your resources and use your resources. And folks always ask me who do the hiring managers want? And the truth is typically hiring managers want someone who's practically already doing the job. So if in your side hustle, you've been doing the job, I can come to them and be like, they have all the qualifications and they're already doing it. Do you want them? And they're going to say yes 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, and to that point too, I think hiring managers can be very impressed by building up that side hustle. I know somebody who, I don't remember what he was doing before, but it wasn't in journalism really, but he was just passionate about news and I think it was personal finance. And he was creating his own YouTube videos. He was producing them start to finish. He was talking to cool people and making them really digestible and cool. And then he ended up getting a job as an associate producer, making those videos full time. And, he was up against folks who had backgrounds in traditional journalism, who'd worked in newsrooms. But ultimately they were he's so passionate and he's doing it on his own. There was something to that was very attractive. So, that's also another way that you can think about it too.
Love it.
The whole self-starter thing they ask. They want a self-starter and what better way to prove that than to be doing it when it's not even your job.
This is very true. Lovely, great. Another question from my DMs. This is fun. I'm interested in finding out about freelancers. Do you recruit freelancers too? I'm really curious. And is that at the same link that you would apply for jobs at the overall organization? And they've also asked if they're what the link would be to apply for jobs at NBC.
So moving backwards, the link to apply to a job at NBC is nbcunicareers.com. And I'd say any job that we post, that we have posted publicly, is available for you to apply to. Some are staff, some are freelance. You'll have to look at them to see what the job descriptions say. But what I would say too is that if you're looking for freelance opportunities, a true freelance opportunity where you're writing a one-off article, or you want to develop a relationship with an editor so that you can go to them and say, hey, I have this really cool idea. Would you be interested in me writing it for you? Then I would recommend looking up the folks who are contributors editors at NBC in particular, because that's where we are. But at NBC or even any other outlet, contributors editors will be the ones to look for to talk about potential freelance pitches.
Okay. Oh.
I'm going to leave it at Sam's.
Okay, cool. From now on, what I'll do is like, if you stay muted, I'm just gonna keep it moving. But also like, that's a nice little piece of information. Like, I didn't even know that. So yay for learning things. Ooh, here's a nice meaty one. Let's say that you want to be an on-air contributor, or like one of those guests that they bring on as like a, I don't know, an expert, somebody. How does that work? Who do you go to? Is that also in the recruiter portal, or, do you have to know somebody? I mean, I don't know anybody, so
Yeah.
I want to know too.
To be a contributor, I think that's a little different. I don't know if you have, Sam. I don't, contributors don't typically go through our funnels. But I feel like when I was at Maddo, at least, I would get a lot of emails from folks who would just send me like, hey, I just wrote this article on this thing. I could be a contributor. Hey, I did that. I feel like send that to bookers probably. Mm-hmm. Like figure out who the bookers are on the show that you're interested in going on, whatever your subject matter expertise is, and pitch yourself.
Okay, she's nodding yes. I will say, as speaking from a segment producer point of view and working on several different shows for the network, that is how we get a good plethora of people that we eventually bring on. You pitch us something that's in the news and give us your expertise, and depending on when you do it and how you do it, we bring you on. And sometimes that doesn't happen. I admit my inbox is like a war zone. It's gives me PTSD. And there are times when I am just like deleting a ridiculous amount of pitches. There are pitches that don't make any sense for the shows that I particularly work on. And I think that, like, here's me giving you some advice. If you're trying to pitch yourself to come on to speak as a guest, someone that you want to catch the attention of the higher ups that make these on-air contributor decisions. So clearly this is none of us, but know how to pitch yourself well. Please don't pitch me about Dinosaur Land. Yes, that's a thing. Please don't pitch me about like random sex toys. I cover politics. Like there's just, it's not gonna work. So there's that. And also patience is a virtue, so if you pitch me on like a Monday and I don't respond, like you can hit me back on a Thursday. But if you email me every day, it's not going to work out for you the way that you thought it was going to. And also, like trust that if we are interested, sometimes we'll respond right back to you. Sometimes I just forward it to the bookers. Hey, I think this is interesting. And it might fit into this block. And then we might get back to you. Maybe the bookers will get back to you. It's a huge web of people, and just know how to put yourself in the best light so that we can utilize you. And I'll leave it at that because that's all I really know. Okay, and then we are moving. So, okay, so this comes from someone else in the chat. Oh, look, we have a hand. Yes, let's do the hand first. You have an initial for a first name, so I'm going to say Giovanna. Why don't you ask your question?
Got it. Thank you so much to everybody for doing this for us. My name is Giovanna, and my question is to the recruiters. If you could give us some secret tips, let's say top 3 secret tips for breaking through past getting noticed. Because, for example, it seems that a lot of the people who work on the inside, they get to move up, and obviously we really appreciate when a company promotes from within. But that only works if you work at the company. If you're coming from the outside, can you tell us those top 3 tips that really help, whether it's reaching out to you via LinkedIn, whether it's something else specific, etc., please?
That's a great question.
Yeah. I'm like top 3. I mean, I think the first one is always apply, which is like, a cop out kind of, but it really, really is apply, and apply first, right? Like, look at this. If you're actively looking, I would tell you to look at the site twice a day, honestly. Like there could be nothing that you're interested in today, and then tomorrow we can open something new on like a new digital show, and there will be a slew of things. So be in there and be first. And then feedback, ask for feedback. And I know that we do try our best to get, back to everyone and let them know if you've spoken to a recruiter and they said they're going to slate your resume, follow up. Hey, did you slate the resume? What did they think? If you, had an interview and they're like, hey, they weren't interested, they move forward with somebody else. I typically try to provide the feedback that the team gave me. If not, ask me, ask for it if you're talking to a different recruiter, just so that you know what to do differently next time. And if it's nothing different, like a lot of the times it's not that the person wasn't good or not qualified, it's just they were not the most qualified. They weren't the best for that particular position. And yeah, keep applying. Sam, thoughts?
I completely agree. I think you nailed it. I can't think of another. Definitely apply, definitely follow up. I think feedback is huge. Yeah, that's great.
And the tailoring the resume, again, like really, really reiterate, like if you, go by the job description, and if I'm looking for someone with control room skills, and I can't tell you how many times I speak to a candidate and I'm like, hey, I read through, twice. I'm not seeing control room, but it like talking to you, it seems like you boothed a show before. They're like, oh yeah, I've totally boothed. I did 2 years when I was over, and whatever. And I was like, put that in your resume. Like it was in the job description, put it in your resume. I called without having seen it, thinking you might have done it, but somebody else might not call. So.
Are there any keywords that really work out?
I would say it depends on the job. If I'm looking for, let's say, a segment producer for NBC and you know how to use iNews, because we not use iNews, I might look at that. If I'm looking for an associate producer and I need them to edit, and that team uses an Avid, then I'm gonna search Avid. I need someone who can hit the ground running. So do they know how to do that? So read through the job description and make sure that if you have that skill set, it's in your resume and it's close to the top or in its own section. Make sure it's visible and not buried in somewhere, and make sure if you're using jargon that it's across. Sometimes that's hard to know, right? Like sometimes it's hard to know whether the jargon that you're using about a particular job is across the industry. And so you think you're communicating that you have that skill set, but it's not something that I'm picking up on because that's not what we call it. So, like chirons, banners, stuff like that. That can
I was just about to say that.
Because that's the one. There's like 17 different things. Lower third. Like there's a million
lower
different
thirds, chirons, banners. It's never the same word by word.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
Someone had it in their resume as something else, and I just had never heard it. And I was like, I didn't think there were more words for it, but there are. But little things like that. Hand your resume to someone who's not in your industry and see if they can tell you what you do for a living. Like if they can't tell what you do for a living being outside of the industry, you're not being descriptive enough about what your day-to-day looks like.
Love it.
That's a great point. Yeah, just quickly, be specific. Like sometimes folks get too like broad sweeping and, like liaise between departments. Well, what does that mean? Oh, you stretched and supported a totally different department and helped them bring in X amount of accounts for your, sales job or whatever. That is so much more powerful of an example. So think of stuff like that, right? That can really paint a detailed picture of your experience. And to the point about keywords, that is really important on LinkedIn. So recruiters, like Tiffany said, like we live on LinkedIn, like we have a special version of LinkedIn that allows us to search according to keywords. So my recommendation would be to make sure that your LinkedIn reflects your resume so that even if you're not actively applying, a recruiter could potentially find you for a relevant opportunity that you might not have even known about.
Before I go to, there are multiple hands and I have multiple questions, so I'm going to flip flop between the two. I'm also going to add, because I know that I did this a lot, and I know that women do this as a whole. You better brag in your resume. I mean, you just have to just like toot your own horn. You got to tell them everything that you've done that no one else is going to tell them, and put stuff in there that is like, yes, to the keywords, but also things that aren't necessarily like germane to the job where you made this huge difference. So for a while I was running Reuters social media, and I made a sick amount of money through our like video ad program, like honestly sickening. I was like, oh my God. And best believe that was like pretty high up on my resume. And besides the point that I was not applying for a social media job at all, because that's not my ministry, it was high up on my resume, and every single person I interviewed with asked me about it, how I did it, how it worked out. And they love to see stuff like that. So if you did something that nobody else did and you were the best at it, you better brag. Just do it.
Yes,
I have
that's a great example.
Yeah, I have an Airbnb that I run, and I'm a really amazing host, and I'm really, really good at customer service. And if you better believe that link is on my resume. Like, here's the 75,000 people who also think I'm amazing. You should see that.
There you go. Okay, so I'm gonna roll through those questions. We have a graduate student. Thank you, Giovanni. We have a graduate student who graduates from Columbia Journalism School in October of 2022. She would like to know, what is the best way to keep in touch, because she's not graduating soon.
I think we unmuted at the same time. Oh, the wonders of Zoom. Yeah, so great question. What I would recommend too is, if you're looking for early career opportunities, or you're looking for, post-grad opportunities, we have a lot of like rotational programs within news at CNBC, MSNBC, and NBC News. So take a look at those and see if you can find the recruiters for those, and get in touch with an early career recruiter. And you could even ask them like, hey, do you have any rotational programs that are coming up? What are the cycles looking like? Can I apply? What I tend to recommend to folks who are about to graduate is that it takes about 3 months. 3 months is the industry standard to fill a job. So I think, okay, you're graduating in May, backdate that 3 months. That's when you should start really actively looking and applying, because within that time, you could potentially get an offer that you could realistically start when they need you. But if you start applying in January and you get an offer, in February, you're like, oh, but I'm in school until June. They're like, oh, well, that's not going to work for us. So think about the timing in that way too, but definitely find like early career recruiters and ask them about, what their landscape is looking like. I would recommend.
And early careers is really good about, blasting stuff on social media accounts. So I'd say follow them on social media accounts and like get the alerts.
Thank you. I did want to say that early career does not apply to me.
I was about to say
my
that.
age and experience, so I don't see myself moving in that direction. So in light of that, how should I tailor my approach? Just look at the 3 month out for a position, say during the summer, and then move forward from there.
Yes, I apologize. I assumed. Yes.
I was supposed to follow up because I knew who the question was from.
Yeah. Think in terms of that 3 months, but the recommendation still stands though to find a recruiter, right, who is relevant for the types of jobs that you want to be looking into, because then you can talk to them about, hey, what's coming up? Here's my skill set. Here's what I'm looking to do. Do you see a fit? Where do you see me potentially fitting in?
Wonderful. I'm going to go with the next raised hand, which is Amanda. Amanda, you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi. So I had a question about if you guys hire people who produce videos and people who are photo editors who work at national newspapers, do you find that they're able to transfer and over to like a network and be successful in that role? And what advice do you have to those people to make themselves more marketable?
That's a great question. So I've actually had folks who've come over to the digital side from like creating video or taking photos or even writing articles for newspapers. The skills are absolutely there. They're definitely transferable. The one thing that I will say that hiring managers do question is workload and like quick turn, right? Because the deadlines are different. In digital, the deadline is basically every 30 minutes. Sometimes. So making sure that your resume and your application reflects your like turnaround capabilities, right? If you're publishing 2 to 3 stories in a day, well, that's perfect. That's what we do too. So just making sure that you kind of specify what your job looks like and what you do to like deliver.
Okay. Did that answer your question, Amanda?
Yes,
Okay,
it did. I had like a follow-up question. Can I ask that now?
Sure. Keep it quick because I have a bunch of other questions and I want to make sure we get to them. Go ahead.
Sure. I just had a quick question about what advice do you have for people who have applied to the portal but not really heard anything back and have also like reached out to people on LinkedIn?
Cop out, but keep doing it, right? Keep applying to the roles, work your networks. I'd say, if you're finding, like Sam said, make sure you're reaching out to the correct person on LinkedIn. Making sure you're, if folks reach out to me that are interested in like finance roles at NBC, I don't do that. I can pass your resume along, but I don't have those roles for you. So making sure you're reaching out to the same person, and take a look at what you're applying to and your resume again, right? Is it reflecting, is your resume reading what it should be reading for me to select you, right? If I have 400 resumes, it could be like a great resume and have most of the skill sets, but I'm going to pick the top 10, that are cream of the crop. But yeah, keep applying, keep talking to, and look at your network and see if you know anyone in the building, honestly, too, that helps, right? If you know someone that can, speak to your work, and reach out on your behalf, that never hurts.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so then we have a question from my DMs. This question is asking to drill down a little bit more about how often people should be contacting recruiters. Like, don't email every day, but like, what are some safe rules? Once a week, several times a week? What if we've emailed the recruiter numerous times and haven't gotten a response? How do we catch and keep your attention?
Yeah, great question. So what I would say, I have 2 different answers. So one is if you're actively in a role, if a recruiter has talked to you about a job that you've applied for, or you've interviewed with a hiring manager or some other members of the team, I would say give it a week between contacting the team, right? So say you met with somebody on a Monday and you don't hear back by like Friday, maybe email on Monday to be like, hey, I met with so-and-so, just checking in, seeing like what my next steps were, if you have any feedback. So I'd say I would recommend a week in between if you're actively involved in a search and an application. In terms of maintaining relationships, I would say like email as appropriate. Like if you see something that you are really passionate about and you see a job that you love and you're like, I just want that job so bad and I applied, like email the recruiter. If you're just checking in to say, hey, thinking about you, wondering if you have any openings, maybe quarterly. Definitely we put a big emphasis on, maintaining those relationships and making sure that we have folks in our pipeline for when roles do open. So check in like every quarter if it's not about anything specific, but if it's something that you're really passionate about and you see, apply first and then reach out.
I also think too, there's a difference between staying in touch and asking for time. And I think that if there's an active, like a role that you're interested in, and you want to talk it through, and it's my role, and if it's not, I can send you over to the right person, a couple minutes. If it's just checking in because you want to let me know like what you've been up to and stuff like that, it can be an email, right? So feel free to send stuff my way. Honest to God, bandwidth wise, because of that, I might not respond, but I'll probably watch the piece you did because I think it's cool, and I'm still super interested in what you're doing. And the next time a role comes up and I type your name in my inbox, I'll be like, oh, that's right, she did send me X, Y, and Z, or he did send me this, or he has been up to this, or whatever. And these are examples I can use. So also distinguishing, staying in contact and asking for time. I've got, folks who I adore, like they're good at their job and I want them in my pipeline. But every month they're like, hey, can I put a half an hour on your calendar? And it's honest to God, just not, it's not feasible, with the amount of folks that we're talking to. And we're trying to get, we're trying to get your job, right? We're trying to get the right people in the right seats. So just be conscious when you're asking for time that it's for something specific and it's something that we can actually help you with.
Awesome. Ayana, you're the next hand raised. Please unmute and ask your question.
Hi. Thank you all for providing so much insight. It's really been helpful. So I have a question based off of the fact that you all have been kind of emphasizing that it's important to, link to your work on your resume and be as specific as possible and really highlight yourself. But it's just like, how much is too much in that sense? Like, when I was first coming out of school, they said, keep your resume to one page. Now I've been working for a few years, and it's just like, is it still like the one page maximum kind of mindset, or do you still look at resumes that are like 2 pages or longer? Like, how much is too much and how much is too little?
Great question. 1 page for sure. Try to keep it to 1 page as best you can. And in terms of like linking out, right? I'm thinking, I hope I can describe this properly because I have like a vision in my brain about it. But, say you worked at NBC, and one of the lines under your NBC experience is that you wrote literally thousands of articles for this website over the 5 years that you were there, which is actually not an unrealistic thing to write. What you can do is you can say, wrote thousands of articles and highlight thousands of articles and click out to your bio page, your author page on NBC's site, right? So that you can see you can guide the person who's looking at your resume to your work as it's relevant and as you bring it up. If you have a note that says, broke a major news story about XYZ, link out to that specific story in that line about your experience, but definitely keep it to 1 page. And that'll help you too to really pick the best of the best descriptions and experiences that you had from each role that you held.
I guess like quickly just following up on that, in terms of like deleting some stuff off of your resume. I've been I graduated from undergrad 5 years ago. And so I don't know if it's like stuff that I did in undergrad is still even relevant. And it's like, I don't know if that's something that you guys would still want to see in there. I've kind of heard mixed things. Like, I was the editor-in-chief of my school paper back then. And I did like some other internships, and that's really how I got my career started. But I don't know if that's still relevant to you as a recruiter.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I want to see that. But you can make it like more condensed, right? It doesn't need to take up the most amount of real estate on your resume. Like underneath where you say, you're, for example, like, graduated from this place, underneath that you can write just like a single line, like head of the newspaper, or managed, X amount of staffers for a news role. And then for internships, I like to see internships. I think they count as experience, and it shows too, especially if you've gone from an intern to a staff person or staff employee at a company. It shows too that they liked you and they wanted to keep you, and you were talent that they wanted to grow.
Mm-hmm. And as I go to the next question, I'm also going to just point out that so many times when we have roles at companies, and as we grow in our roles, we do the same thing in the job, right? So you don't need to have like producer, and then underneath is like wrote stories, produced video, wrote stories, produced, like, I know. Take the line out. And then like just leave like the good, interesting stuff. Oh yeah, you became like the senior producer there? Awesome. You became the editor of that paper? Awesome. Like, that's what you should leave there. And just like, if that same description follows you, girl, copy and paste it to the next line, delete it from the last one. Okay, moving on to the next question. Sorry to rush because we only have a few more minutes and I have a bunch of questions and I want to ask them in the DMs. Someone was asking, with so many people, are you seeing more job applications during the pandemic than previously with so many people out of work? How are you selecting talent with so much to choose from? Thank you. With a smiley face.
Yes, I want to say it always depends on like the time. Not always. I've been doing this for 1.5 years, so I can't tell you like in my 5 years what I've seen. But so far, right, like right around graduation time, all of our early career like type roles, boom, like 600, plus resumes in those roles. Sadly, right, we're in an interesting time in journalism, right? There are shops closing down here and there, every other article is journalists, journalist roles being cut and stuff like that. So I see after like maybe like a month or so after that goes down, when everyone's had a second to like regroup and fix up the resume and beef everything up, we start getting reach out, start seeing those folks in the in the career site, applying. And then I guess as far as how to pick out those folks, it really is role by role, right? Like one producer at one show is not the same as another producer at another show. It depends on the team. It depends on what they're looking for. It depends on, is this a new role or is this person replacing someone that was on that team? What was that person really good at that now there's going to be a hole, looking for that. So it's a lot of times it's being at the right place at the right time with the right credentials. And so I don't know how exactly the saying goes, but it's like, opportunity is like, being prepared for it once it gets there, right? Grooming yourself so that when the opportunity presents itself, you are the best candidate. Yeah.
Perfect. What's the best way to ask for feedback after being rejected from a job? That hurts, girl. I know how you feel, girl. Either of you there?
Yeah, just ask. Just ask. If you're on a call with a recruiter and they say, hey, sorry, we went with somebody else, you could say, thanks for letting me know. Is there any feedback that the team would be willing to share with me about my application? If you get an email, you can reply to the email and ask for the same thing.
We got to the end of the questions with 2 minutes to spare. I'm so happy. I was so scared I was not going to get everybody's question in. Thank you. And thank you for letting me speed through those last couple of questions. I hope that it didn't seem rude to anybody. I'm just like, please let me get these questions in. But thank you so much, ladies, for taking the time to speak to everyone and give all this candid advice. Is there anything that you feel we missed here? Some question that we didn't ask, some piece of advice that you would desperately like to give to people that they never think to ask for?
Something I've been telling other people, because I've also been telling this to myself lately, is don't talk yourself out of doing something that you want to do or that you want to try, right? And updating your resume does not have to be a week-long endeavor where you're like sweating over like thinking about what could I possibly write. Carve out 20 minutes. It'll probably look beautiful once you're done, and then you can go apply with it. I tell myself all the time, like, get out of your own way. So like, don't talk yourself out of stuff. You're absolutely like, if you want to go after something, go for it. That would be my advice.
That's right. And just tapping onto Sam's, it's so much more technical. Once you're done with that gorgeous resume, name it your first name, your last name. That is so important. I can't tell you how many times I can't find someone's resume because it's like, QTR resume 727. I'm like, I can't find it. So that's all I got.
I have fallen victim to that. I understand that. Like, I can't find my own damn resume. Like, what did I name it again? I don't know. Thank you so much, ladies, for taking the time to answer all of our questions, to give us all of this wonderful insight. Dare I ask for an email address? Would it be okay if I share, or you could drop it in the chat, because we're only going to be here for like 2 more minutes. If you want to, you don't have to, no pressure. Or if there's like a group email that within like NBC that you can like, and then it goes to like all the recruiters. I don't know how these things work.
That's a genius. That's something I'm going to raise. That doesn't exist, does it, Sam?
No, not to my knowledge.
That would be really cool, right? I mean, it just makes sense, and then maybe some intern somewhere, I don't know.
I will say,
like,
if you apply to a role, we can find your resume like in the system, even if it's not for our job. So sometimes I'm just like, there's got to be a producer with this particular skill set. So another reason to put your resume in the application system.
Oh,
Yeah,
see,
definitely. And I'll drop my email in the chat. Feel free to send me a note, ask any questions. Definitely happy to be a resource for you all moving forward.
Same here.
Oh, I love it. I love it. All right, so I'm gonna wrap this sucker up. I don't know. I was watching Hairspray the other day. It stuck in my head. Please forgive me. You know, again, thank you so much.
Just a clip from your reel from Little Americans. And there's no subtitles in this one. So I'm going to ask for you to explain what's.
I think someone's not on mute and we're hearing something about subtitles. So just warning you in case you say something you don't want us to hear. But as I wrap this up, I just want to thank you again, Tiffany and Samantha, for taking so much time to talk to us, to answer our questions, to volunteer your email addresses, and really help demystify the process of, you know, getting into the world of NBC. I will say, as someone who's only been at NBC for a year, I like it. It's interesting. You can also email me. I'm happy to answer any questions because I'm actually not. I was recruited from LinkedIn. Someone stalked me. Look at that. And I'm happy. I'm also happy to, like, you know, look at resumes and stuff. Pass your name along. You haven't contacted me. Hey. So there's that too. As our lovely guests drop their email addresses in the chat before we end all this, I'm going to remind you of the upcoming programming that we're having through the club because it's free and hopefully helpful. Next week, we're going to have a very similar program to this one, How to Get Hired in a Pandemic, with a talent requisition lady from the New York Times. And the following week, we're having a sit down with the staff of the Story Exchange, who did this amazing roundup of 100 Years in Power. It's about women gaining the right to vote and continuing in the struggle of gaining basically control over our lives and power and bodies. So there's that. April 21st, we're having a sit down with Taffy Brodesser-Acker. I never pronounced her name right, so I hope that's correct. She is a staff writer for the New York Times Magazine, an author, a front page award winner, and she's gonna give you the tea on everything. How much, like, you know, you can ask her questions. And I dropped my email in the chat, sure. She's gonna answer your questions. Salary, you wanna know how much salary you should ask for? She's gonna tell you. You wanna know how she got that book published? She's gonna tell you. One of her books, she's publishing a book soon, and her other book is being made into a TV series or a movie right now. How does she do it? I'm not sure. Do I wanna know how she did it? You're damn right I do. So you can ask her. So that's happening. And the week after that, April 28th, we're also doing another How to Get Hired in a Pandemic with the Wall Street Journal. So many things happening. And unfortunately, I'm the host of all of them. So you can see a lot of me and all of this energy. I realized that I dropped my email to just one person, so I'm gonna drop it to everyone else. And also, you know, I dropped my email in the chat. You can also very likely get me at the email for the Newswomen's Club. I'm usually in there answering emails and setting up programs. You can do that. If you have an idea for a program, I'm also very happy to hear it. We want to serve you. That's what we're here for, furthering newswomen in New York. So with that being said, thank you so much for a wonderful afternoon. I hope everybody is successful in their endeavors. Thank you for the time again, Tiffany and Samantha, and go forth and conquer.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, that was good. Okay, this is good. All right.
Is someone talking? No, okay.